that's exactly what you do. Like, you are a doer.
There's nothing going on in the house on a Monday, and then they go back on Wednesday, and there was like a whole house bill already.
Right. But you managed to, again, embrace change, always learning, always growing, and you've literally climbed up through our organization to where you're one of the top leaders.
And now it's like, just build a house. What, their build a house in 120 days?
If ever for a moment that someone thinks that project managers ain't going to bat for homeowners, they've lost their mind. You manage projects start to finish for us, and you always have raving fan clients at the end of the day. So, like, what's your favorite part of that process? What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Barndo Show podcast. Today we're going to take a dive inside of Barndo Co, and I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mario Galindo here with me. And, Mario, you've been with us since day one, basically. So just introduce yourself, man. Tell everybody what you do inside the company.
I'm Mario. I'm one of the project managers for the Upstate and some builds in North Carolina. And, man, I just do whatever we need.
Well, that leans into you, man, because, like, at the annual this year, we gave out our first ever, like, Barndo Awards based off the core values. Which one did you win?
Won the Doer.
The Doer Award, man. Yeah. And I can't think of – there's two where you and Derek were, like, head and head on. But the Doer, man, that's exactly what you do. Like, you are a doer at the center of everything. So – there's so much stuff inside this company that you have been involved in, and you're still involved with a lot of it. But, now you've got a really specific role that you do. But you still, beyond just being a project manager with us, you kind of oversee a really important piece of the operation when it comes to how we frame out our structures. So let's talk about that a little bit, because everybody – when they're talking about Barndominiums, there's so many different ways to build it, but we build one specific way the majority of the time, which is this post-frame hybrid. And you kind of were with us when we adopted that. Like, we went from building just, traditional pole barn structures to this more hybrid model so that we could, lean only into doing residential houses. And there was some things that we had to do to make it where it was widely accepted for financing and all that kind of stuff. So Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's one of the biggest questions we get from people, like, how do we build what we build? So you kind of run that side of the framing and everything. So talk a little bit about that, like, based off of, like, everything you've done in construction prior to this, and then you kind of really leaned in and championed putting together the system that we use to build our houses.
Well, like you say, being here since the beginning, and we used to build just 6x6 and then 2x6 across, just like a normal pole barn. But now we build like super structural houses. Like, even homeowners go in and touch the walls trying to move them, they're like, whoa, this is sturdy. And it's just a big difference. But it's mostly the way how we build now is just 2x6 structure all around.
Right.
And that's like a big difference where it sets us apart from other companies too, where like they use like 2x4 walls. We use like the stronger side.
Right. Oh, for sure. So, like, let's walk through a day in the life. So you, like I say, you project manage. Like, we got clients that are raving fans of Mario. Like, I get messages all the time on Facebook, like, we freaking love Mario, and I'm like, we do too. We love Mario. But like when we move into a new market, you always kind of are one of the first people on the scene up there, meeting with our framing crews and helping us build out, future crews to cover a wider area, because we were building just in the upstate of South Carolina. Then we kind of went to the Midlands and then the Low Country. Now we're in Eastern North Carolina, Western North Carolina. Now we're in Eastern Tennessee. So, like, walk us through that. So you show up and the concrete's there, from a framing perspective, kind of like what's the first steps? Like, walk us through the steps of how we erect that Barndo.
Well, for me, like you say, I always have to go through every single job most of the time, especially when we start like in a new, like we start in Somerville. I had to go over there, teach most of the framers the way we built.
Right.
Here in the upstate was just basically me and Nando.
Yeah.
And which it was crazy because some homeowners would be like, hey, there's nothing going on in the house on a Monday, and then they go back on Wednesday and there was like a whole house built already.
Right.
But I would just pull up to a job and start marking the house. Just see how everything's gonna go. Most new framers, they get scared when they hear like metal, right. And they're just like, oh, I don't know how to do it. But it's basically almost the same structure as a regular house, kinda. And once I show them like kind of what to do, they're like, oh yeah, I got it.
Right.
From there, it's just.
So so you go and you do marking. So you're talking about like the post layout. So
yeah.
You're marking where all the posts go for the post frame, and then like, they talk about how we set those posts up. Like how do they attach? So because again, this is traditionally, you dig a hole, you put a pole down in the ground. That's how you build pole barns.
Yeah.
We do it a little different because we're building homes, and we know that keeping that wood out of the ground is a benefit. So we build that structural slab, and then you guys come in and like walk us through that. Like step one.
Yeah, I have seen some pole barns though that they had done to like dig a hole, but no matter what, it's gonna go bad.
Right.
And the way we do it now, we pour the concrete, then we have the story bracket. And then we drill in the concrete with 6 inches bolts, right. And it's sturdy.
Right.
And then from there, just set the posts and keep on rolling.
Right. So posts go in. Once the posts are up, talk about our trusses. So, because again, we kind of took a hybrid approach to building, and so we do a traditional foundation, which is common with traditional builders, and so and like I say, there's a little bit of debate in that in the pole frame, the pole barn, the Barndo community about how to do what and what's more traditional pole barn. But the way we build, again, like we're not building garages and shops, we're building houses all the time, and we'll build a barn or an accessory building if we're building their house, but we're not really in just the pole barn business. We only build Barndominiums. And so, a lot of people have no idea about the whole process. So we come out, y'all set the sturdy wall brackets, you mount the posts, and then we utilize steel trusses on probably 90% of our jobs. And that steel truss assembly, talk a little bit through that. Like how do y'all attach those? How do y'all get them up in the air? And then kind of like from there, you kind of fall back into that traditional framing model. But like, walk someone through that. Like, what could they expect, right? You said it best. Like, they call on Monday, and they're like, nothing's happening here. And then on Wednesday, they're like, oh, my God, we got a whole house. And that's the cool part of building the way we build is it's so quick to erect the building. The rest of it, it's traditional timelines. But that initial framing piece. So talk a little bit about that, right? You got the posts up. Now what comes next?
Well, before, I used to drive a skid steer and with a teleboom But now we got so big that honestly, I can't be on every single job,
right?
Putting trusses up. So now, somebody will bring the trusses in. The framers will put them in together, and I just get a crane, fly them in. Some of the customers, when they're on site, they're super excited about like just seeing how they're flying. And then they see people out there like it's just metal trusses, and then they got these purlins. And they're like, how in the world they walk on that? And I was like, I don't know neither. I don't know how I did it before too. But yeah.
Yep. So the trusses go up, and then built into those steel trusses, we have the little cups in there for those purlins. And so like purlins, just so if you're listening and you're like, what does that mean? Purlins are
the 2x6.
The 2x6s in the ceiling that the roof deck attaches to, and then the drywall is attached to the bottom side of that. And so that's kind of the biggest distinguishing difference in what we do versus just traditional stick built buildings is doing this post frame model. All of your weight, everything is anchored to the truss system, to the poles, and that gives us these big clear spans with the big high ceilings that everybody loves.
Yes.
And so like you said, with scale, we had to get away from driving a teleboom around and
Yeah.
and flying those up, which is honestly the way most people do it. But being in so many different markets, like now we have drop yards for the trusses, and the trusses get loaded up, and then they bring them out, they assemble them, and then they fly them up with a crane and set them. And like, talk about previous experience building, like traditional construction versus this, like in terms of like how fast you can visibly see the structure. Now there's a lot of stuff that has to happen after that with all the infill framing and everything, but kind of elaborate on that. Like, you guys show up day one, you're setting posts and flying trusses. Like you're building massive houses in a day, basically. Yeah. And then once all the posts are set and the trusses are up, like walk us through the next steps. Like kind of get it all the way through to where your crews are rolling off the job.
One of our biggest, I won't say the hardest part, is just setting the posts, especially where they're like 20 feet tall.
Right.
This is one of the hardest part of that job to do, setting those posts up. And after that, man, it's just framing inside is like half a day probably. Now that we include OSB on top of the roof or all around the house, especially when we have those high pitches, is where it takes a little bit more time. But it's after the posts are done, literally 2 or 3 more days, inside framing, it just goes up super quick.
Right. And you were talking about the OSB. So one of the things that we do differently than, again, we kind of took traditional pole barns and we took traditional residential construction, and we've kind of married and blended the two. And so, like we were talking about at the beginning, like, in a traditional pole barn situation, you put the poles up and then you run your outside girts on the outside face of those 6x6 posts, and then we would attach metal directly to those girts. And what we do, because we're finishing that inside, like that wasn't a great way to build, because you end up with so many different things, and even the horizontal framing created some difficulties with the drywall on the inside. So we've kind of went to now all vertical infill in that. And so what I mean by that is, like, once that post goes up, that is the structure. Like posts and trusses, that's the structure of that house. And then everything in between those posts are traditional, 16 on center, vertical 2x6s. They're framing out window headers and everything in more of a conventional sense. And then we are attaching exterior sheathing, and in some cases that could be a zip board system or something like that. But our typical assembly is OSB with Type R house wrap and everything like that. So like what it does is it creates that thermal barrier between the inside insulation and that metal panel that goes on the outside, that metal sheeting. It gives us a thermal break so that we can put something in there like open cell spray foam, right? Mm-hmm. So, in your experience, man, from like day one building with the Barndo Co to today, what have you seen in efficiency wise, like our ability to build those things, in terms of like days on job?
It's 100% better. That I can say it's like 100% way better. Just the way we used to build before. I mean, I'm not saying it was wrong though. It's way different now. More structure and just way better.
Right. Well, and part of that is just scale. You were with us when we were building like 10 a year.
Yeah, like literally everything was on my mind. You can ask me, hey, where we at on this house? I'm like, oh yeah, we right here. Right. Now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that house. Never been there neither.
Right. Yeah, no, it's crazy, man. Like the things that have changed just in the sheer volume of homes that we're building. But the cool thing is like we've never done anything that lessened. It's always making it better. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about like project managing, right? Because you've ran jobs in the old systems, you've ran jobs in the new system, and kind of like how we've streamlined things out. And from your point of view, right? Talk about some of the things we've done to make the build process more efficient. You as a project manager, like what have you seen?
Biggest change it was when y'all brought in more people.
Right.
Like before, I mean, our schedule was not that good.
Right.
And y'all got some more people, like they were like qualifying everything that have done these before. For me, I have never been a project manager before coming into Barndo.
Right.
I have background of like doing concrete, working like on the construction side, building houses, concrete, doing grading too. That's like mostly my background, but I never was like a project manager till I got here.
Right.
So when y'all brought in Billy, he's the one that is being on top of me about schedules.
Right.
And it's been great, man. Like before we were just working whatever we knew. But now that y'all brought in new guys, they have like a schedule where like their companies before them, they knew exactly the steps.
Right.
We knew some of them, but they're like, we never had them like structure, you know?
Right.
And now it's like just build a house. What their build a house in 120 days? Yeah. Things because like schedule.
Right. Well, and again, that it just speaks into the size like growing, right? If you looked at the way we are operating, it was working fine for 10 houses. But then scaling up to build, like we'll do over 100 units this year. And I think sales has probably got us geared up to do 150, 160 for next year already. And there's still 6 months of the year left for them to keep selling. But in doing that, part of that is systems of scale, right? So we had to figure out, like, how do we take what we're doing without diminishing the quality? How could we even improve quality, but also get more efficient? Because the only way that we're going to be able to build more is we got to figure out how to do them quicker. So we, went in and pulled guys in that were from that production building world and took some of those ideas and concepts and turned them into Barndo standards. Because we still don't do it exactly the same as like a large scale track builder, because there's just some things that like that doesn't make sense for what we do. But I agree with you, man. Billy's the warden. Like he holds it down on the schedules, bro. He keeps everybody on their toes. But like as a project manager, like what's your favorite piece? So I know like you're so heavily involved with the pre-construction and then the framing, like all the, you're training everyone in the field that builds Barndo. And that's one thing that's really cool about it, because you've been here since day one. You know what the expectation is. You know what our goal is. You know what we will do, what we won't do. And then you've kind of took that and championed it. And so as we expand, one of the biggest questions we always get is like, who's building it? And so we have dedicated crews that work for us that build these structures, and then we move into new markets. We spend a lot of time meeting with these new framing crews and stuff. And a lot of times what happens is we have a crew from this market that'll actually go up and build the first 2 or 3 while we're training new trades in that area. But you're kind of championing that, because the biggest distinguishing difference in what we do in every other trade is, like, it's not hard to find cabinet people. It's not really hard to find drywall people, because it's kind of the same process once you get to that stage of construction. But that initial framing, we have to find people and teach them that Barndo Co way. And you've kind of championed that, man. And it makes me happy, because, like, again, you've been here since day one. And, if anybody understands the core value alignment and how important that is, you get it.
Yeah.
But from a project management standpoint, like what's your favorite part? Like when you're managing a job start to finish, because I know, like I say, framing's kind of that's your expertise, but that you manage projects start to finish for us, and you always have raving fan clients at the end of the day. So like, what's your favorite part of that process?
It's when like I'm one of the ones I like to. I always ask the clients, hey, you want to put like your fingerprints in the concrete? And they're like, wow, I never thought about that. And we're like, well, let me set it up for y'all. They go out there, man, and they just, you can see their smiles. I was happy. And then I'm just, it's happy when I'm just like able to capture that moment where like, hey, they like putting the handprints, kids, and it's just going to be like the forever home.
Right.
And then I hand them the keys.
Right. Yeah, I know, man. Like everybody, like I think you like if we were to track it, I think you probably have more cards and thank you notes, and homeowners are always buying Mario stuff. Like he's like Mario's a fan favorite for sure. Inside the building project, like what's the coolest project you've worked on with us?
When I was framing, I can't remember the Godfrey's. Yeah. That I love that plan, man.
Yeah, that's a sweet plan.
Yeah.
And then we got another. What's that? What's the one up in North Carolina that we're building this like massive?
Williams.
The Williams plan. That one,
Yeah.
I remember you calling me on that one, and you were like, "Do you realize that it's 50 feet from?"
Yeah, I was like, every single sub that he has come here, like, hey, you're gonna have to give me a lift to get up in here, and I was like, ain't no way. So, but once we started building it, I mean, I never thought it was gonna be that high. I mean, we have built barns that are like top 38 feet, 40, and even Ross's, I think it was 40, but this one, it went up to 40. 45 feet from the ground.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah, it's massive.
That's massive. What's been your favorite clients to work with so far? Spread the love. I'll put you on the hot seat now.
Mostly every single one that I got, man. I always create a relationship with them. It can be outside of work or inside of work. Every single one. I'm not just gonna say one name, but yeah, every single one. Right. I like them, they like me, and then that's how it goes.
I think that's why everybody loves you too, because you kind of embrace all that with them, and you go the extra mile.
And I mean, I'm always straightforward. I'll be like, hey, this is gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Well, I think it speaks into like some of the core values of how we operate, right? Like building the house is the goal, but there's an experience inside of that capturing those little moments along the way and making them feel heard during the process. Like that's what you're there for. You're managing their project. And in addition to having different soil and different land environment, different plans, different municipalities and building inspectors you're trying to please, you also have different personalities with every single job you show up to. So navigating some of that, it's like a master craft. Like I love watching how you guys interact, and you can always tell, like even on the back end communication systems that we use, like you can see like how the personality of the person you're building for is kind of driving how you're managing that project. Sometimes on the front end when you go out there and build this like basically a friendship with the clients you're building for, like it makes it easier, and you kind of become their voice internally to where you're in control of that job site from permit to door key. That's your baby. Mm-hmm. And so like seeing how each one of you guys navigate that is just always fun for me, because if ever for a moment that someone thinks that project managers ain't going to bat for homeowners, they've lost their mind, because you guys, I mean, like, like it's daily. Like there's something going on there, like, hey, this is this way or this is that way, and the project manager's like, that's not going to work. Like this is what we've got to make this happen. And I think it's just it attributes to the core value model, because we care more about the people than we do the product. But also it just talks like it's the quality of people that we have, man, and the fact that you've been here since the beginning, because with anything with growth, like you're scaling into things and you're growing. And one thing that I'd say that you kind of embraced is the always growing part of the business is like, when there's a change, you're one of the first people that's in there, like learning that change and embracing that change and championing that change and like taking it out and rolling it out, and like not getting left in the dust, and so a lot of people get stuck in their ways, and they're just kind of like, oh man, I can't do it that way, or like that's not the way we used to do it. And you never once have you had that approach. You've always just kind of embraced it and grown tremendously in the company, from being, like I say, our right hand man out on job sites with Ross, like co-constructing, to now, like I say, you're basically leading the charge every market we go in, with going and training up crews to be able to keep up with the production, but also maintain the integrity of the product that we have. And that's been super cool to experience this. So let's talk a little bit about this. Like, how did you get into construction? Like, what drew you into this world?
I didn't plan for it, but I mean, I've been in construction since I was like 13 years old. Well, my uncles, they been in construction. My father-in-law and brother-in-law, they build custom houses, and I was like build things, you know. So from there, it's always been like kind of my background. Like I said before, it's just I started working in concrete, grading, and framing. So I've been here and there. And one day, Ross calls me and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna build a Barndominium." I was like, "What is that?" And like, just come to my office. I was like, "Okay." I pull up, just still like a 5x5 little office, or
the broom closet.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, at that time I was working doing concrete, and I was like, okay. He showed me. He pulled up a plan. He was like, "This is what you got to build." I was like, okay. The biggest thing about me is like, if I don't know it, I got people that know it.
Right.
So he was like, "Can you do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally, yeah." He was like, "Okay, here you go." And then from there, I think we built 2 houses, and then I was like, "Hey, I got trained by one of the guys," and then I was like, "Hey, just let me do it. I think I got it now." And from there, it's just been like what is now.
Oh, dude! If ever there was someone who came in and learned the system, and again, we were kind of doing traditional pole barn framing, and then we were trying to build this model to shift into what we now is standard, and that's kind of when you came in, and so you were learning with those crews and stuff like that, and putting that brain to work of how in the world can we take that concept but morph it into this so that we can build more. And you champion that. So let's talk like the opportunity here, So like you came in, just kind of like laboring with us, and then from that you've kind of advanced from ground up in our company to where now you're like a staple name. Like there ain't nobody that works inside this company that doesn't know who Mario is, And there's several clients, like I say, that are raving fans of Mario. Talk a little bit about that, like coming into this company, hearing about it from the very beginning when we decided, like, hey, we're going to champion Barndominium building in South Carolina. That day one, you're in there, you're meeting with us, and, we're pole barn building, we got roofing and exteriors and all these different things, and then we just honed all that down into one. You're like day one employee that comes in to kind of head up that division. We had no idea at that time that it would become this.
Yeah.
But kind of talk about that, because a lot of times what happens is like, you have growth in a company, and obviously sometimes people who got you here won't get you there, but you've managed to, again, embrace change, always learning, always growing, and you've literally climbed up through our organization to where you're one of the top leaders in our production side. So like talk a little bit about that. Like what's that been like for you over the last 3 years?
It's been a life changer, man. Especially because now I have more time where literally I can set my own schedule where hey, my kid got a game Saturday or tomorrow. I can work, I'll set my schedule. Hey, I got to do this before this. And just the freedom that you have here, you don't have it nowhere else. And like you say, here in this company, you will never be left in the dust. There's always opportunity to grow. You just gotta learn, and just as long as you keep working and like never like giving up, just keep doing you. And that's what I did, and I guess he brought me here.
Right. I know. I hit you up. I was like, "Hey, man, I want you to come on the podcast." And you're like, "Me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, you."
Yeah, I was like,
so, and I get it. Like, again, in 3 years, your whole life changed.
Yeah.
From literally grinding 7 days a week to Now you're in this management side to where
I think I still do more now.
Yeah. Dude, Mario's always like, I could call Mario at 5 a.m. or 10 p.m. and he'll be like, "Oh, I'm just working on this thing over here."
Yeah.
But you're always doing something. Like you pulled up in the parking lot today, you're in the truck with a trailer behind it. Like I think you've already been on like a couple job sites this morning, before we sat down, and but that's who you are, man. That's why you're successful, and again, it's not being afraid to put in the work. But what's been really cool for me is like you're seeing the family side, and I can remember in the beginning, everybody was doing all we could to keep this thing running during that growth. And I can remember Saturday morning, there was a job and like we were hosting this big real estate event and like people were coming to the job site. And I mean, it's a construction site. Like they're not supposed to be show homes during construction.
Yeah.
And I showed up there and was like, oh my God, like I've got 75 people coming here. Like we got to figure something out. And you guys roll up and it's like a family event, man. Y'all pulled up and I think your kids had soccer games.
Yeah.
And but having that kind of family culture has been awesome, man. And like seeing you grow just inside your own family, man. And like, having the space to just, be a dad.
It's like you said it before, it's like you're building people.
Right.
And I was in love with the money, man. I think everybody is, but I let a lot of my family live kind of on the side when I was just trying to work. But whenever I start working here, y'all made me change like the way I think. Right. And I'm grateful for that though. Just learning the way y'all care a lot about a family. Like I do care about family, but right. Just I never like I said, I would just focus on work. But y'all made me like a better person too at home and work too.
That makes me feel awesome to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Like it kind of gets lost in the weeds sometimes because I mean, let's be real. We start businesses instead of nonprofits because we want to make money. Mm-hmm. Like that's the reason why everybody wakes up, leaves their family, and goes and does something. It's because that's what's necessary to create income so that you can support a family and do those things. But a lot of times in that grind, you can get lost in it. I've been there. The reason why, I'm a champion for we don't work weekends. Like, you've been in construction your whole life. How many construction jobs have you had where you didn't work weekends?
Just this one.
Yeah.
This one.
But there's a reason behind that, like, hey, at the end of the day is over, and because, again, this goes back to core value. When I started this, because I've been in this my whole life. My dad was in construction. Growing up, I didn't see my dad. Well, because he was a bad dad, just because he was trying to provide something that he didn't have, right? And so he worked round the clock, and he had one of the biggest drywall companies in the Southeast at one point in time. I mean, he was doing every big builder's drywall in North, South Carolina and Georgia. I mean, he was doing everything. And then that transitioned over into commercial work, and he was traveling all the time. And, like, I remember being a kid and being grateful and thankful for the income and the money. And, like, I didn't have financial struggles as a kid. I wasn't ever lacking, right? But I also remember not seeing my dad at my Little League game. And as a kid, I would have traded every dollar for that moment. And, like growing up, like I can remember, I remember one time, and again, this is not an attack on my dad. My dad's one of my best friends, right? But it took years for us to get to the point to where we have a great relationship. But I remember one time as a kid, and I played baseball and football and stuff, but baseball was my passion. And I played it from the time I was 5 years old till grown man, And I remember one time, me and my dad playing catch in the backyard, and I was like, this is the best moment of my life. And him even being like, I can't believe you can throw a ball that hard. Like, because he just wasn't engaged in that side of it. And the thing is, like, my dad grew up without a present dad. And, not the greatest father figures in his life, and he grew up struggling. Like my dad grew up dirt floor poor. You know, my dad dropped out of school after the 8th grade, got into construction, and made something, right? He made something out of nothing. And in his mind, the goal was, I've got to provide more than I ever had. And he did that. Like, he hit that nail on the head. But in doing so, we lost so much. And so, like, now it's really cool to see my dad with my sons and my daughters. Like, him being a granddad, he's more aware of that. And so, like, he'll drop everything to hang out with them. Like, there's not a day goes by. He hit me up right before we jumped on this podcast. Like, what are you doing? Where's my kids at? I'm going to the lake. I'm going to come get some kids. And, like, it's just that is so important, right? And then what happens is like I grew up that way, and I remember being the kid going, like, I would give anything for my dad to be here when I hit this home run. I'd give anything for my dad to have been here when I got the game ball. Like, I'd give anything for that. But you follow that step. And what I noticed was in like my late 20s, early 30s even, that I was becoming that. Like, I was so mission driven for the money and the success, but I had to stop and say, what is success? What is the money worth if I destroy my marriage, I'm not present in my kid's life, and I don't keep the main thing? And so I went through this like life-changing experience to where I was like, this ain't it. This is not success. So I had to redefine that in my mind. And when I did it and I built this company, one of the promises I made to my wife was, I'll build a company that functions inside of our family life. And I will never build something that deters from this family life. And to do that, it has to be a part of who you are as an organization. And so I set that bar. And it's because it's a passion to me. And so then, like, when you come in and you're in that culture, it makes space for you to be dad, right? And, like, you know, that's the best part. You're like, dude, I got time. I can go to my kids' soccer games, you know? I see you posting pictures like at school, you know, the kids got awards day. Mario's in the picture.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people to obtain. There's a lot of people who started businesses, and the only reason you ever start a business is for two things: time and money, right? That's it. You want more time, you want more money. And the thing is they'll give up the time, which is the freedom that they started a business to create, and they never get it, because they're so obsessed with chasing that moment, right? And they miss out on all the other things that life is really about. And so one thing I say every day inside this company to at least one person is, you are not what you do, right? You're a person, you have a family, you have a whole identity outside of this company. That's the most important thing. You know, we go do those annual retreats. How out of the 4 days we were in the mountains, how much did we talk about business growth?
Not a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
How much do
now.
we talk about personal growth?
A lot.
Yeah. That's the mission.
Yeah.
So like to be the best at everything we do, right? That's the number one core value in this company. The B in Barndo is to be the best at everything we do. Well, you don't just do this job, right? And so that's creating space for that, man, because at the end of the day, like, I care about you. I care about your family. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like when your family wins, I'll win. Like when I see you post that moment, like you're at the soccer field with your kid, that's a win for me. When I see you post tragedy, that's a tragedy for me, right? Like I feel that because we created that family environment. So it makes me really happy to hear you say that, you know. And,
like I say, it's not just here. It's like you say, it's just like a family. It's not just, oh, another coworker or another, just the boss, you know. Yeah, y'all really, you and Ross really turned my life around where, like, my mindset was now in the right place. And now I'm going the right way. And especially, too, where invited me to the Miracle League. He also said impact in me, though, where when I got there, I was like, what I'm doing here? What I signed up for? But then once you start actually learning about these kids, they're just so happy, man. I told my kids, I'm like, y'all better be grateful what y'all got. And yeah, hopefully I told one of my kids, the oldest one I have, he's 10 years old. I was like, next time we got another one. You going with me, and just that way, so he can learn.
It's perspective.
Perspective. Yeah,
it's 100% perspective.
Yeah, like I say, he changed the way I think a lot of stuff too.
Yep. Yeah. And I tell everybody this: like, we donate a lot of money, but the time is what's important. Like, Pam. I'm always hemming up Pam at the beginning of the season. I'm like, I need as many possible days for my team because everybody that goes there, no one has ever volunteered and didn't come back and do it again. Mm-hmm. Because it's perspective, and it reminds us of why we do what we do, and so it creates that opportunity. Like in your life, man, did you ever dream that you'd be volunteering at Miracle League?
No, no way. But like I say, yeah, it changed my whole perspective of just life.
Right. That's good stuff, man. Well, dude, I can't express enough the value that you have inside this organization, and like, you're just that guy. Like, if anything needs to be done,
just call Mario.
Just call Mario. Like, and I mean, I try to tell you all the time, like, man, even at home, like, you would think owning a company that you'd be able to take care of your own stuff first. That's not the case. Like, anything that's going on in my life or Ross's, like, it's back burner. Like, we don't have time. It's hard to create time to do things for ourselves. And like, one thing that we just did was like, we built this porch on the back of my house, and my wife's been on me for 2 years about like upgrading that thing. And like, I finally did it, but like, it wouldn't have been possible without you. I mean, like, you basically, I just told you, hey, I'm starting this project. I need to get some guys out here, and I never even have to talk about it again. Like, I just come home in the evenings. I'm like, wow, look at like,
it's done.
This looks so good. Like every piece of it is just, and you just did it. And that, again, man, like if I had to draw up the definition of a doer, I'd put your picture down. Like, I don't know if you can win that award 2 years in a row, but like that you are the definition of doer. There's never been anything that we've ever came to you for that you said no. And again, that's a two-way street. We can't abuse that. But super thankful for you, man. Like, we would not be the company we are without you. So I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and hanging out with me. I know this is outside your comfort zone, but
oh yeah, thoroughly. I was like, nope, I'm not going to that.
Yeah, man. But no, it's important, man. Like, you're a vital piece of who we are. People need to know who you are, and the perspective you gave on how the company has helped you, man. Like that makes me feel good because I know how valuable you are to us, and to hear that we also have that value to you is tremendous. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Barndo Show podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this content, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And then be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at the Barndo Co. Super simple to find us. And then when you're ready to dive in a little more, maybe look around some of our available floor plan options, or take a look at the gallery of our work, or maybe you're ready to connect with our team and explore what it looks like to build your dream barndominium, you can visit us online at thebarndoco.com.